The Other Wes Moore, One Name, Two Fates by Wes Moore was published in 2010. Wes Moore tells a story about himself and that of another man, one with the same exact name. Now both of these boys grew up almost the same. They both lacked a father figure, slacked in school, and are involved in illegal activity. They have such similar circumstances, it makes one think how one life could turn out so different from another's. Wes' life in prison compared to Moore's life serving the country. The way one is raised may have some shape to who one grows up to be, but it comes down to who one wants to become. The boys' childhoods were the same, but Moore wanted to be successful. While Wes did not want to end up in prison, he made no effort until it was too late. Ultimately, a past including involvement in illegal activity, lack of a father figure, and bad choice of friends does not determine where one will go in life, but it is the desire one has to succeed that determines the future. The Moore boys were raised without father figures. Both of their mothers left their father, or their father wasn't around anymore. The reasoning behind this was because the fathers were abusive alcoholics. Moore writes, but the relationship didn't even make it to their child's birth. Since leaving high school years prior, Bernard hadn't found a steady job. He spent most of his time searching for himself at the bottoms of liquor bottles. Mary was left with two alcoholic, abusive men who shared the DNA of her two children, but no dad for her boys. Wes's father was abusive and an alcoholic. His mother found it hard to raise two boys without a father figure. Moore writes about his mother and his sister's father, and she discovered that what she had foolishly thought of as typical low-level recreational drug use was really something much worse. In a time of drug experimentation and excess, Bill was starting to look like a casualty. They were in very similar situations. They both had children that had drug-abusing fathers who were not involved in their lives. They were raised by their mothers. Moore was raised by his mother only after his father died, which I know made his home life worse. Lacking father figures, the boys went off on their own and got into trouble at very young ages. That is why they got into a lot of trouble. They had no one to look up to besides their mothers, and of course they didn't do that. Wes looked up to his older brother, but he did not set a good example. They chose to run around and hang out with whoever on the street corners of their neighborhoods. These boys got into a lot of trouble. In some situations, they were just in trouble with their mom, but other times they got into trouble with the law. Moore writes about Wes. In addition to the knife fight when he was younger, Wes had been arrested a few years back after being caught stealing a car. Wes had gotten into a knife fight when he was younger, then he stole a car. He was arrested, and his brother's father picked him up before his mom found out. Neither boy wanted their mom to find out about their run-ins with the law. Later in the future, Wes was involved in a robbery. He was charged and sent to prison with no chance of parole. Wes didn't care. His brother warned him about getting in trouble and getting involved in the drug trade, but Wes wouldn't listen. If Wes looked up to anyone, it was Tony, and he didn't set a very good example. Moore also had run-ins with the law, but his were much less offensive. When he was 11, Moore was arrested for tagging. Moore writes about his experience. My uncertainty about what to expect ended when the officer reached above my head and began to pull my left arm behind my back. Now I understood where this was going. I was being arrested. There was almost no difference between these boys' actions, besides how offensive they were. Both of them were back at it again within days. Both of the Moore boys were involved in the drug... Just kidding. They began to struggle in school due to their disinterest and lack of motivation. The boys both struggled in school. Their mothers were both concerned about their son's education, but the boys were not. Not until they were a bit older anyways. Moore writes about his struggles in school. After a series of unsatisfactory report cards, my mother had begun to think that many of my teachers were telling her. My mother began to think that what many of my teachers were telling her was correct. Not too long after his grades started dropping, Moore began to act up more. His mom was concerned about his actions and behavior, so she sent him to military school. Wes's mother moved him around a lot, so they went to different schools. Wes liked to skip out on school. Moore writes, Wes had no intention of going to school. He was supposed to meet Woody later. They were going to skip school with some friends, stay at Wes's house, and have a cookout. The boys had similar circumstances because they both struggled in school. They didn't need to, but it was just a lack of motivation. Later in life, Wes decided to get his GED because he had dropped out when he was younger. He decided to go back, but he was too old for high school. Moore writes, many of the other students were now looking to Wes for help with their GED prep, for assistance with their personal issues, and for friendship. After getting some of his life together, Wes was becoming a role model to his peers. This impacted his future because he was now educated and he saw a new opportunity. Going to work and making money legally was a new feeling to Wes. He had a job that was sporadic, though. It wasn't steady, and this led him to relapsing back into the drug trade. He was not making enough money to support his children. He was doing so well until he fell back into the same old pattern, which is something that Moore did not do. Moore also became a leader and a role model to his peers. Moore writes about going into the Army. My next decision was clear. I wanted to stay at the Valley Forge and attend its junior college, which would allow me to go through the early commissioning process, receive my associate's degree, and become a second lieutenant in the Army. I wanted to lead soldiers. He went on to be successful in the Army. He really enjoyed it. I think that this is one of the best things that his mom could have done for him. After all, she wasn't punishing him. It was what she thought was the best for him. This had a huge impact on who he became. He was whipped into shape and found something he loved. This influenced his future because this got him out of bad decisions that included illegal activity. His entire attitude and outlook changed. As Moore wrote about a conversation with Wes, from everything you told me, both of us did some pretty wrong stuff when we were younger, and both of us had second chances. But if the situation or the context where you make the decisions don't change, then second chances don't mean too much. Moore and Wes were both troubled children. They made bad choices throughout their lives. Their decisions in their childhood and teenage years opened up the doors to their future as an adult. One went on to be successful and live a proud and happy life, while the other went to prison for a lifetime. They both had second chances, and after getting arrested, Wes could have made the decision to change. He also could have made the decision to change when he went back to get his GED and went to vocational school for carpentry. He did not, and that is where he went wrong. He chose not to take the second chance that was given. Moore was given a second chance when he was sent to military school. His mother sent him there, so it was not his choice, but instead of refusing, although he did for a while, he embraced it. He took his second chance. He became a proud soldier, and he got a degree. He went off to Afghanistan and fought for our country. Moore took the second chance, and he made a life out of it, while Wes just passed it by. Growing up in a town filled with poverty, with no father, and being surrounded by drug abusers was hard. No child would know how to handle it. The Moore boys sure didn't. Wes grew up in the same poverty-ridden streets, with a drug-dealing older brother and a mother who was trying her best. He was left free to roam and do as he pleased, and anything he wanted to do wasn't good. He was choosing to do bad in school. Wes was choosing to do bad in school when he was a child. He dropped out and had children of his own. Then years later, he chose to get his GED. Going into carpentry was yet another decision made by Wes. He was trying to turn his life around. He tried for a while, but the pressure got to him again. He was diving back into the drug trade and getting involved with much worse things than drugs. He chose the path he was going down. Moore was also in poverty-ridden streets, without a father figure, and sisters and a mother he had to look out for. Moore got into fights and run-ins with the law. He chose to do bad in school as well, and he didn't show signs of doing better. When his mother sent him away to military school, it was the best thing she could have done for him. He didn't want to stay, but was forced to, and after a while, he decided that was what he wanted to do. He wanted to join the army and lead soldiers. Military school guided him to getting a degree and having a career. He was becoming successful, and life turned up for him. These two very similar paths grew into two very different lives. While one was serving our country, the other was in its prison. It shows that even people in the worst situations can end up in good places. The similar circumstances between these two men played a huge role in the novel. The similar circumstances showed how both of the boys had a different desire to succeed and how their lives played out. The entire idea of similar circumstances revolves around motivation and desire. Throughout the book, the boys wanted different things, and they worked to get those things. Wes wanted new shoes, so he began to be the lookout for drug dealers, which provided him with money to buy the shoes. Had he wanted good grades, he probably could have achieved the good grades. Moore wanted to be there for his family. He wanted to be someone. He achieved that goal, but only after going into military school. Moore was motivated to become someone successful, while Wes was not. The story shows how little the impact of one's childhood is in correlation to how successful one wishes to be.